I'm taking a sidetrack here to show one last tutorial, well, not one last, one offset tutorial by itself. Now, being able to code tic-tac-toe is fine, and I'm kind of hoping you already know iPhone stuff. So I'm going to give this a name. Let's see. UIView. Now let's just finish the name, because it'll say Tut App Controller and it just looks weird. So it's really important that you understand how to use the tools that you have. And the main tool inside of the iPhone is the UIView. So I like to create sandboxes, and let's go into the viewcontroller.implementation. And we're going to mess with UIView. There's two ways to create it initially. You can put it in the zib and hook up an IB outlet to it, or you could just create a view. I'll call it v1. Let's kind of put it a little below the top left corner, and let's see, can't make it too big. Let's make it kind of thin. So it's 90 pixels wide and 10 pixels down. Okay, I might want to close the brackets there. Okay. Now, as always, we have to put it into the view somehow, so add, it's not finishing functions because they don't have brackets. There. Okay. Add subview v1. Now the retain count is 2, so we might want to release it. Or to make the code clean, you could even just auto-release. I like doing both. If speed is not a factor, it just keeps your memory up on the different ways you can release things over time and make sure that the last thing retain it is whatever should be holding on to it. So since the view is holding on to it, we'll just leave it at that. As soon as the view is released, then the subviews get released, so we don't have to worry about it. Now all this is going to do is put the view in the background, but without a background color we probably won't see it. By the way, background color is one of the things we should probably mess with. I didn't use orange in the other tutorials. I kind of still don't want to use it, actually. It's just kind of in between bright and not bright. Let's run it, and I'll get to my point very soon. Oh, look, the iPad simulator. There's a narrow view inside of it. So, I am running an iPhone app. I don't know why it defaults to iPad simulator. Okay. You might have noticed that aside from the views in my other tutorials, all of the other code is the same as you would have done or learned in a console class. The for loops, the declaration of the pointer, the multidimensional array, even the logic for the win has nothing to do with what shows up on the screen. It's pure C, aside from using UIView, which is part of Objective-C. But the way you use it is exactly the same as anything you do in C. So it's not important that you understand, if you understand the algorithms, it's not important that you understand what is it, the logic. You're supposed to kind of know that. It's important that you feel comfortable doing stuff like this. Let's make it animate for 2 seconds. I like prepping this. Hit enter, space, backspace. It's the quickest way to get it to finish writing the completion block. So So get comfortable with Objective-C interface specific things. Everything else is the same. So I'll change the background color. On completion, I want this to change to red. And I want it to move down a few spaces. Oops. Okay, completion block will not animate, but watch. It happens as soon as the animation is complete. View animations are integral to working with views and getting the interface to move around. You can also do layer animations, which use either keyframe animation or CA basic animation. And you have to import quartz to get that to work. Let's see. So yeah, it's just really integral that you understand iOS 4. If you have not had much experience doing this, if you just kind of followed along the code and wrote as I wrote the tutorial, you'll want to create a sandbox, or you could just use the tic-tac-toe game, and you'll want to play with moving different properties of the views. You might want to play with these. You could even create a for loop. So let's pretend that this was in the tic-tac-toe tutorial. If you wanted to try to animate all of the views and just get them to slowly move down, you could just change their property. So you'd say you wanted the left column, which is that code right there would access the left column, and then you could change it using CG point make, and that would animate to the upper right if you shoved it within an animation block, that is. And keep it simple. So what I'm doing right now is stuff you should be comfortable with doing. And that just creates a basic animation block. The animation blocks don't allow user input while they're happening, so for these 2 seconds, user input won't happen. You have to use the bigger one and throw in an option that says UIView animation, and not the one it's trying to autocomplete, because that's an iOS 3 version. You just say option, and then allow user interaction, or option curve ease in. Then you just do the animations as usual. And that was it enter space backspace. It autocompletes, overwrites the initial statement thing that the placeholder, then backspace just gets rid of the extra space. So these are things that you should get familiar with, not from a standpoint of the documentation, oh yeah, you know how to do it, but you should get familiar from a standpoint of, I have coded that, I can mess with it, I even coded with it long enough to know the difference between bounds and frame and why I should use one or the other. Make sure you know that hidden is not an animatable property, but the opacity is. And the view, the opacity is actually called alpha. We want that alpha, and that's how visible it is. So 1 is fully visible, 0 is invisible, 0.5 is half. If you mess with a layer, which you have to import quartz, I believe, to mess with too much. Layers property is opacity, and that is essentially the same thing. Alright, and that is it for telling you to get some practice. By the way, get practice. start practicing.